Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right into it. You know that feeling, right? You wake up early, you put in the overtime, you skip the nice vacations, and yet no matter how hard you literally work, you just can't seem to get ahead. Well, today, we're going to look at exactly why that's happening. We're going to break down the mechanics of a system that is quietly shifting beneath your feet. And most importantly, we're going to explore a very real mathematical escape hatch that's completely changing the global financial landscape.
It's kind of the ultimate modern frustration, isn't it? Every year, or maybe every few years if you're lucky, the number on your paycheck actually goes up. You get the raise, you celebrate, maybe you start buying that slightly nicer brand of coffee. But somehow, you are still falling behind. Groceries cost more, the house is further out of reach, the car payment is just way higher. For the longest time, we've been taught to look at this and think, oh, the things we're trying to buy are just becoming more valuable. But according to our source material, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what we're actually looking at.
To really understand the problem here, we first have to redefine what we think of as money. Because money isn't just a piece of paper, and it's definitely not just a number on a banking app. Money is, quite literally, stored work. It's the hours of your life. It's your actual time and energy, turned into something that you can hold and save for the future. The entire contract of money is supposed to be that you put your hours in today, and they remain your hours when you go to spend them in 10 years. But here's the tragedy. What happens when the container holding your life's work starts to leak?
Which brings us to Section 1, the stretching ruler.
What's really fascinating here is this concept of the denominator. When the price of a house or your groceries goes up, the house didn't fundamentally change, right? It didn't suddenly get extra bedrooms or better plumbing. What changed is the thing you are measuring it with. Central banking systems are essentially stretching the ruler. It was never really about the price of anything, it was always about the denominator, the dollar itself. And every single dollar measuring stick on Earth can be stretched by people you will never meet, sitting in rooms you'll never sit in, largely by people you didn't even elect. When they stretch the ruler, the value of your stored work basically just shrinks.
Let's move on to Section 2, the hamster wheel.
This creates an absolutely exhausting reality where you're trying to out-earn a currency that is constantly being stretched. We usually just call this inflation, but let's look at it through the lens of our sources for a second. When new money is printed, wealth isn't actually being created. They are just quietly reaching into everyone's stored work and skimming a little bit off the top. It's the slow confiscation of your time. And they do it quietly, constantly, and literally forever.
So the absolutely crucial point is understanding the mechanics of this fiat hamster wheel. You are running a race you were never designed to win because the track is constantly moving backwards under your feet. Because your money no longer holds its value, you are forced to become something you never asked to be, an investor. You have to invest just to survive and maintain your purchasing power. And to be completely impartial here, our sources highlight that this is not a left-wing or a right-wing issue. When it comes to monetary policy, there really is no opposition party. Both sides of the aisle, every single administration rely on the exact same money printer. They function as a uniparty on this issue. There are no other guys to vote for to stop the printing.
This contrast brilliantly illustrates the world we're leaving versus the world we're entering. Just imagine a split-screen historical documentary. On one side, you have the analog past, the 1913 Federal Reserve, black and white shadowy meetings run by unelected committees that constantly restructure and stretch the rules, and the ruler under severe stress. Now on the other side of the screen, you have the vibrant digital future of 2026, decentralized self-custody. It's not run by committees, it's an autopoietic system, meaning it's self-creating and self-producing, entirely governed by unyielding mathematics and code. It is an unmovable, highly precise ruler.
All right, Section 3, the escape hatch.
This fundamental contrast brings us to a moment where everyday people can finally step off the wheel. For all of human history, if you were in a collapsing or debasing currency system, there was literally no exit. Every kind of money you could hold was controlled by somebody who could simply make more of it. But our sources present a really powerful thesis for this new era. You don't fix the Fed, you opt out of needing it. You don't try to change the uniparty. Instead, you step through a glowing orange portal into a totally new system.
Which takes us to Section 4, the unmovable ruler.
Let's look at the core mechanics of Bitcoin. 21 million. This is the one idea that breaks the entire trick of the fiat system. You cannot print Bitcoin. Its supply is absolutely fixed. It is literally the only commodity in the history of the world that is absolutely scarce. There is no committee, no crisis, no emergency, and no election that can ever unlock a single extra coin. Remember that stretching ruler we talked about earlier? For 100 years, it has confiscated your stored work.
while Bitcoin is the first measuring stick in history that nobody can move.
And that's because it's not run by good people instead of bad people. It's run by no people. It's run by math. Math doesn't get greedy. Math doesn't get scared. And math certainly doesn't call an emergency weekend meeting to authorize a multi-billion-dollar bailout. The record of who owns what sits on thousands of computers worldwide, constantly checking each other. There is absolutely no door for a government or a CEO to knock on to demand more supply.
What this creates is truly profound. It's the first permanent property right in human history. Think about it. Every other asset you own, real estate, gold, stocks, you hold at the pleasure of the jurisdiction you live in. But Bitcoin is a bank in cyberspace. It boasts absolute scarcity and true decentralization with no off switch. Most importantly, it allows for true self-custody. You hold it with a key that only you control. You can literally memorize a phrase and carry your entire life savings across any border in the world inside your own head. No government can stop it, and no politician can interfere with it. It makes your stored work truly, finally yours.
Now let's dive into Section 5, the Strategic Reserve.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking this is just some fringe internet idea, let's look at how the highest levels of the United States government are officially recognizing this exact shift. Introduced with bipartisan support, the American Reserve Modernization Act, or ARMA, of 2026 aims to take executive policy and cement it into permanent federal law. Proposed by Representatives Nick Begich and Jared Golden, this bill flat out acknowledges that the system is changing and the U.S. needs to lead confidently in the digital age to protect taxpayer interests.
Let's break down the sheer scale of the ARMA bill's provisions because it's massive. The target reserve is a staggering 1 million Bitcoin. The Treasury would be authorized to acquire up to 200,000 Bitcoin per year for 5 years. Furthermore, it mandates a strict 20-year federal holding requirement, meaning politicians can't just sell it off for short-term political gains. And as for the estimated 328,000 seized coins the U.S. already holds, it completely ends the practice of auctioning them off, transferring them directly into this permanent strategic reserve. All of this is being positioned as an ultimate hedge to help address that massive $39 trillion national debt. But how do they pay for it without taxing everyday citizens? Well, this is where the bill gets really creative. $42.22. That is the price per ounce that the Federal Reserve's gold certificates have been frozen out on the books since 1973. ARMA proposes revaluing those exact certificates to today's current market prices.
And that massive gap, it generates hundreds of billions in an accounting surplus. By using this budget-neutral mechanism, the U.S. government can fund these massive Bitcoin acquisitions without issuing any new taxpayer debt whatsoever. It is a deliberate, calculated reallocation. They're legally and fundamentally transferring value from analog-era wealth storage into digital-era value. It shows that even the lawmakers realize the ruler is broken, and they are moving fast to secure their own position on the new, unmovable measuring stick.
Which brings us right back to you and your stored work. We've seen how the fiat hamster wheel constantly debases your time. We've seen the unmovable mathematics of true digital property rights. And we've even seen the world's largest superpower actively building a reserve of it. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. If the current system's only move when it breaks is to quietly hand you the bill through inflation, are you ready to step off the wheel of debasement and stop playing their game? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really encourage you to keep exploring this incredible shift in human history.